In 1965, an Alabama city became a battleground in the fight for a voice. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his followers pushed forward on an extraordinary march from Selma to Montgomery, and their efforts climaxed in President Lyndon Johnson signing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The quote that I chose was, "Our lives are not fully lived if we're not willing to die for those we love, for what we believe." This particular quote shows the importance of Martin Luther King Jr. telling his family, friends, and followers that you're not fully living if you're not prepared to die for your loved ones. You have to make a sacrifice for someone or something you love to show that you won't go down without a fight. If you're not ready to die for what you stand for, then you're not really living. The movie takes place in Alabama in the towns of Montgomery and Selma. It's from 1963 through 1965. In the movie, it shows the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where they marched for the first time. Selma is comparable to New Left's historiography because it's about civil rights, conflict, and equality for people of color. The majority of whites didn't get along with blacks. Instead, they beat, threatened, and killed them so they could get rid of them and make sure they don't come anywhere near them again. Black citizens peacefully protested and stood up for what they deserved to have. White people caused all the conflict and made it worse for them. They faced racism every single day of their lives. The Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, desegregation in education, happened in 1954, and the Vietnam War happened in 1954 through 1975. These two events happened while the Civil Rights Movement was going on. Earl Warren, who was part of the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, expressed a ruling in the landmark civil rights case of this event. Sanctioned segregation of public schools was a direct violation of the 14th Amendment, thus unconstitutional. 1 year later, on May 31st, 1955, Earl had read the Supreme Court's decision instructing each state to start desegregation plans. The Vietnam War was long and cost us our men. More than 3 million people, including over 58,000 Americans, were killed in this war, and more than half of the people who died were Vietnamese civilians. Communist forces ended the war by taking control of South Vietnam in 1975. The country was combined as a Socialist Republic of Vietnam that following year. Selma portrayed how there was change over time because 5 months later, Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 with Dr. King by his side. It gave the names of the black men and women of where they are now, such as Andrew Young, who was appointed UN ambassador under President Jimmy Carter after serving 3 terms in Congress. He was later elected mayor of Atlanta twice. John Lewis, who had served 28 years as U.S. Congressman for the 5th District of Georgia. And Coretta Scott King, who established the King Center and lobbied for a national holiday in Dr. King's honor. Selma gave us a look of how this has caused current events. Racism is still fully alive, and as much as we would like it to, it isn't going to go away. The march is similar to the Black Lives Matter movement, because back then they were marching for equal rights, they wanted to be treated the same as whites, and having the freedom to do what they want without getting harassed. Today, they're protesting for the same thing. They are fighting for equal rights, but they still get treated like afterthoughts. Cops were beating, throwing tear gas, and injuring people of color for no reason. All they were doing was protesting peacefully. It was like how it was in the movie and in real life. What is so wrong with them fighting for their rights? People of color are tired of being ignored. This movement was for them to be heard, not be silenced. They want to feel and be equal to everyone else. Here's a 4-minute clip from the movie.
Now you masters of war, you that build all of the guns, you that build the dead planes, you that build the just want you to know that I see through your mask. You that never done nothing but build to destroy.
Troopers, withdraw!
I would give this film 5 out of 5 stars because it was 100% historically accurate and it pulls the style of a Hollywood civil rights history lesson away from a traditional framework of a white storyteller. The film gives the audience an accurate idea of how it really was back then and what people of color went through to get equal rights and end segregation. I don't feel that it had any weaknesses because it speaks a larger truth about the events, relationships between African Americans, specifically movement activists, white citizens, and US government. And I think the director, cast, and crew did an amazing job showing who Martin Luther King was and what he did exactly.